Animation is really great. It allows filmmakers to tell stories with worlds and characters as far as the imagination can go. We've seen a lot of beautiful worlds and stories told through animation. Unfortunately, a lot of Hollywood animation seems to fall under the almost Pixar category, as everyone likes Pixar, so the other studios try to replicate this style. This results in boring and generic character designs, and worlds that leave me wondering, why not just make it live action? Yet, in the great year last year known as 2018, we got two films that do so much more with the medium, one of which was Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. You've already heard that Spider-Verse is one of the greatest films ever made by so many people, and while I did love it, I'm not sure if it's my favorite animated film of 2018. After all, it was against some stiff competition. Another thing I love is Dogs. I Love Dogs, a film by Wes Anderson released in 2018. I Love Dogs opened in select theaters this year. And while these two films that I just mentioned are not only some of the best animations of this year, but some of the best in this decade. And oddly enough, neither of them were made by Disney or Pixar. Now, I'm not usually one to compare films. I think that every film ever made deserves to stand on its own, not be compared to everything else. The exception for this rule is during Oscar season, where I feel like I'm forced to choose one out of 8 or so movies to root for above all others. Last year, I was really rooting for The Shape of Water, but this year, I'm not so sure. BlacKkKlansman and A Star is Born were good, Bohemian Rhapsody was okay, and Black Panther was, well, a little overhyped. And it doesn't help that 8th Grade and First Man and Sorry to Bother You were snubbed out of almost every award category that I feel they deserved. So, this year, the Oscars have me in an interesting position where I really don't care who wins. And as long as either one of these wins Best Animated Feature, I don't really care what happens. I just thought it would be a fun way to not only review two movies at once, but to compare two completely different animation films. Now, before we start, a full disclosure. This is my own opinion. Of course you're not going to agree with me for some of this. If you enjoyed things that I didn't, that's great. If you hated things I loved, that's okay. Just be civil, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So, let's do this one more time. Let's start with the art style. Both of these films do something unique with the genre that hasn't been seen too much before. I Love Dogs uses stop motion with handcrafted dolls for characters that might have looked creepy to some, but I thought looked really cool. The fur moves somewhat realistically, while for the human characters, different faces are physically swapped out. Each scene is packed with detail, and as Wes Anderson usually is, each frame could be a wallpaper for my laptop since they're all so beautiful. A little thing I like about it is that whenever something is shown on a screen, within the film, the animation is all hand-drawn. The film's animation style is beautiful, but it seems like it's done before a couple times. Despite that, I think this movie's art style is beautiful, and I'm gonna link a video, which I'm actually showing right here, about the production of the stop motion of this film, and I heavily recommend watching it if you enjoy this kind of stuff. Spider-Verse, on the other hand, is completely digitally animated. It uses both CGI and hand-drawn animation to create this unique comic booky feel, and this aesthetic that's very powerful from even the first frame that you see of this movie. This is completely unique to the film, and from the first trailer you can tell that it's extremely jaw-droppingly cool. The only quote-unquote flaw with this is the other characters from the different Spider-Verses, who often look out of place in Miles' world. I get that this is the point, but it's a little uncanny sometimes. Namely the scene where all the Spider-Men... Wait, no, because there are girls there. All the Spider-People! No, there's a pig there too, and a robot. Where all the Spider-Things... Get it? Because it's like that Blink-182 song. Anyways, where all the spider things are meeting up in Peter Parker's lair. There's one part where Gwen stands next to Peter Parker and Penny Parker that just looks off. And honestly, that's really the only flaw that I had with this art style as a whole. I'm sure that a lot of you disagree with me on this, and that's totally okay. But in terms of animation style, I'd say it's a tie. Spider-Verse's score uses record scratches and a 90s rap vibe to create a fast-paced and energetic vibe. In particular, I really personally enjoyed the score around the cemetery fight that uses bongos and record scratches. Prowler, one of the villains in the movie, has a haunting theme that's perfect for a hitman and the character that he is. This film also pulls a Black Panther and commissioned a bunch of artists to create a soundtrack to accompany the film. You've definitely heard Post Malone and Sway Lee's Sunflower, but Juice WRLD and Jaden Smith's tracks in the album are also really good. In addition, What's Up Danger is a defining song in the film, and it's used the best out of any of the songs. This also plays into the cinematography of the film, but that's a discussion for about a minute later. Isle of Dogs, on the other hand, uses a lot of old Japanese percussion to create a score that fits into the world that is established. It also features the song I Won't Hurt You by the West Coast pop art experimental band, which not only fits the theme of a boy loving his dog, but also fits Wes Anderson's vibe perfectly. I'd give each of these scores a score of 9 out of 10, but Spider-Verse's album boosts it to victory. In addition, if any Sony executives end up seeing this video, please put the whole thing on vinyl. I'd absolutely buy it. And I don't mean just the score, I mean the soundtrack too. Make it happen. Miles Morales' Leap of Faith is my favorite scene of 2018, hands down. The reason this scene was so great was not only because of how satisfying it is after all these build-ups, or the aforementioned music, but because of the amazing cinematography. But, on the other hand, I feel like it would be a crime to not give Wes Anderson an award for cinematography. Each scene in Isle of Dogs not only feels organically parallel and satisfying, but they each look beautiful. And how can I not mention the sushi scene? Spider-Verse had some wonderful cinematography and some beautiful shots, but Isle of Dogs takes the cake. Isle of Dogs tells the story of Japan, 500 years in the future. All dogs have been forced to live on Trash Island due to the dog flu. Tari Kobayashi, the nephew of the current mayor, travels to this island against orders to save his lost dog Spot. He meets up with other dogs who help him on his journey. Meanwhile, protesters create a cure for the dog flu against the government's will and tries to bring dogs back into Japan. As Wes Anderson films usually are, it's filled with quirky characters and a heartwarming story. There are little nuances thrown in that make this writing great, such as the translations and the deadpan deliveries of lines. Some of the darker themes make this film PG-13, which is rarely seen in animation. Spider-Verse tells the story of Miles Morales at its core, a young boy from Brooklyn who is bitten by a radioactive spider and must become the one and only Spider-Man. Yeah, you've seen this one before, but what sets it apart, aside from everything else I've mentioned, is that the spider things from other dimensions are brought in through some weird portal device created by the absolute unit known as Kingpin. So they must all set aside their differences and take this villain down. And did I mention that this is written by Lord and Miller? The writers behind the Lego Movie and the cult TV series Clone High. They're some of my favorite writers in the industry, so of course they can pull this off. Spider-Verse wins. Spider-Verse has like a bajillion characters, each with their own personalities and origin story. Yet, I found most of the other spider things a little flat. Spider-Gwen is the typical quote-unquote cool girl, Penny Parker is an anime parody, Spider-Noir is a parody of film noir, and Peter Porker is a parody of Looney Tunes, and, well, actually great. Props to John Mulaney for not only being immortal, but stealing the show in each of his scenes. All these characters feel flat because they are one-note characters, but they each play that note so well that you hardly notice it. Miles Morales, on the other hand, more than makes up for this. Although he may seem like a typical superhero trope, the fact that he actually takes the whole film to do anything heroic, yet has the drive throughout, makes him stand out from the crowd. He's not a goody two-shoes, as he constantly breaks rules and goes against his father, but he has a heart of gold. On the other end of the spectrum, we have Peter B. Parker. If Logan shows a superhero that aged like fine wine, this is a superhero that's aged like fine milk. He's given up, he's divorced, and just done with the whole superhero thing. That makes for some really funny scenes, and it makes him an interesting mentor to Miles. There's a villain twist that's so obvious your second time watching, but completely missable the first time, And this villain that I'm talking about, that I'm not going to spoil for you, is a really great character in general and really drives Miles to make the leap of faith. Isle of Dogs has like a bajillion dogs. Each one has its own backstory and personality. The main cast works together really organically. Chief is a flawed leader, and he was almost always astray and he lacks compassion. The other main dogs were pampered to no end and find the island really jarring. Atari doesn't speak a word of English, yet the viewer can completely understand him and his motivation for saving Spots. Spots himself is a fearless caretaker that, while only in a few scenes, stands out as a dog who hasn't given up on his owner, but knows what he has to do for the greater good. My favorite dog, shown here, is named Oracle, and she can see the future, quote-unquote, but in truth, she just understands TV broadcasts. This makes for probably the funniest scene in the movie. If I was giving this award to just the protagonist, Spider-Verse would win, but the ensemble of Isle of Dogs is so great that I have to give the character award to Isle of Dogs. And so we've reached that time. By doing the math, I can figure out that, hang on, it's a tie. Not gonna lie, I kind of expected this. Now, originally this video was made to compare apples to oranges to try to determine which film is better. But I've learned a lesson today. These are two very different films, and they're both equally good in their own ways. I guess that shows that animation really isn't a genre, it's a medium. And okay. Wait, what's that you're saying? I have to choose a favorite? Okay, fine, it's Spider-Verse, Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse changed the superhero genre. It broke ground for a new style of animation, has a killer soundtrack, lovable characters, amazing cinematography, a spectacular story, and in truth, deserves most, if not all, of the hype that it's been getting. I even found myself enjoying talking about it a little bit more than Isle of Dogs. If it wins the Academy Award, I'll be happy. But if Isle of Dogs wins, I'll be just as happy. But I think the real victory would be if this influences other animation studios to take risks. Maybe take that leap of faith, no pun intended. Maybe then we'll be getting even more exciting animation in the next few years. Or even better, if all the kids watching these at home get inspired to make animations that are original and that fully use their imaginations. If you haven't seen either of these films, well, number one, what are you doing watching this video? I kinda spoiled a few things. And number two, go watch them right now. They're worth your time. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have some, purchases to make. Hey everyone, thank you so much for watching. I know that this is like a new-ish channel thing that I'm doing, but thanks for taking your time to watch this video. I put a lot of effort into every video that I've made, and it means a lot to me if you guys would, watch them and enjoy them. So thank you.